It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Monday afternoon. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. We are glad to be with you and a lot to get to this week as we'll look ahead to the NFL draft. A pretty neat stat here, 29 Georgia players, meaning either went to high school or college in the state of Georgia, invited to the virtual combine. So we'll talk about that. We'll also get into some of the quarterback battles this spring. Big time quarterbacks across college football have to be replaced. What are the expectations and how has that gone historically over the last generation or so? Ben, Savannah State's got a football game this weekend over in Mobile, Alabama. The head coach of the Tigers, Sean Quinn, will join us. We'll talk about that. I know those guys have waited a long time to play some football, so Sean Quinn will be with us in hour 2. We'll also talk some Ole Miss football with Nick Suss of the Clarion Ledger. But if you've seen it on ESPN Coastal Twitter, we, the show, Christian, we have created a running back bracket. It's March. You got to have brackets out there to vote on to determine a champion with, and we have a bracket of the 32 best running backs in college football history. A 1 seed on that bracket, joining us now on the show, a college football Hall of Famer, one of the premier running backs in the history of college football, a legend on the field, off the field, just an absolute superstar in every sense of the word. Georgia Southern great Adrian Peterson with us on the program. AP, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys?
We're doing great, and we appreciate you coming on. You're so humble about your career, but we have to hype you up, okay? The stats, the championships, the success, the consistency. AP, there's never been anything like it, man. You're a college football Hall of Famer for great reason. When you look back on your career personally, what stands out?
Man, starting out just winning. It's winning. You know, here at Georgia Southern, we was fortunate enough to win a lot of ball games. And I think that's what elevates you as an individual is how well did your team do.
And AP, I mean, BJ kind of touched on it though. I mean, winning aside, I mean, you was able to be a big part of that when you talk about your production, not just game in and game out, but you had enough stats in the postseason for a career. When you talk about the type of numbers you was able to put up, just talking about that standard that you held yourself to, and obviously the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, and you said it's the standard. It never shaken. Whether we were playing App State, whether we were playing Furman, whether the University of Georgia, Oregon State, it didn't change. You go all out and try to put your team in best position, to win, and doing that every Saturday.
We're chatting with Georgia Southern legend Adrian Peterson here on 3 and Out. ESPN Coastal, we have started our greatest college running backs ever bracket. Voting for round 1 is underway. Ben, you've probably seen this. AP is matched up with D'Angelo Williams. This was just posted. AP, you're currently leading that bracket vote 97% to 3% with over 120 votes. But let me ask you this, man. Who were some of the running backs when you started settling in at the position that you looked up to that you really admired?
Oh yes. Herschel Walker was one. Walter Payton was one, and Bo Jackson. And as you may notice, all 3 of those guys wore number 34. So my first jersey number was number 34 because I wanted to add a little bit of their game in mine, and that's what I encourage younger kids to also do. When you're watching the game, don't just watch the game, but watch your position and what those guys are doing, and try to add a little bit of that in your game. Because if they're doing it, then 90% of it is going to be correct.
And AP, you speak of watching those guys' game. I mean, you wearing number 34 because those guys wore 34. Some of those kids, a lot of those kids, hopefully all of them, or watching number 3 at Georgia Southern? When they watch your game, what should they get from your game?
Going hard and hitting it hard. I wasn't a speed guy, nor I guess agility guy, but always going hard and never allowing one guy to bring me down. That was my staple, and I tried to, from Pop Warner to high school to college and to the NFL to continue carrying that mindset that don't allow one guy to bring you down.
Chatting with the legend Adrian Peterson here on 3 and Out as we're discussing the greatest running backs in college football history. Bracket up, voting up on ESPN Coastal on Twitter. And again, AP dominating in his round 1 matchup. You mentioned some of the guys you grew up following. Have there been any running backs since you finished your college playing career that you've really enjoyed watching? I know a lot of people think about AP guys like Reggie Bush and Darren McFadden and Travis Etienne or Derrick Henry. Have there been any guys over the last 10, 15 years that you've really enjoyed watching?
Well, the guy, who's just a couple of years older than myself was Fred Taylor. I can remember I was a sophomore in high school, and of course he came in the same class as my brother Mike Peterson, and he came over to the house, and seeing how big he was and how fast he was, it was an amazing that a guy who was 230, 235 that could run that fast. So, that motivated me a little bit more to get in that weight room because I saw what a Division I running back looked like. And so having those opportunities to see guys as a high school student helped me as well.
AP, what does a guy like Fred Taylor, outside of the fact that you see his size, his speed, his agility, do for a guy like yourself sitting in your living room talking to you, and what about conversations like that help you be able to pass on that wisdom to today's running backs?
Oh, you just look and see that's what a Division I running backs look like. And as you mentioned, man, just the speed, the quickness, the power, has it all. And again, when I went on junior year, senior year, just trying to add a little bit more in my game because, if those guys were, Division I starters at a primetime university, then they were doing something right on the field. And as I said, just trying to add a little bit of their game into yours.
Every all-time great player, all-time great running back has a signature moment. You have a number of them, but a lot of people will always remember the run against Youngstown State. I mean, you're running through guys, you're throwing guys off out of bounds, you're running around the corner to the point where you're making DBs look slow. Somebody tries to square up on you in the open field. That's a terrible idea. You got the stiff arm coming left and right. Walk us through that 58-yard run against Youngstown State, and what was it like in the moment to be that unstoppable?
And in the moment, it didn't seem as great as it looked because when you got the ball, like it may seem like 30 seconds, but I mean it's half a second, and every step is a different angle because, if I'm running down the middle and then I shift a little bit to the left, then that's another angle that the linebacker or the safety is coming at. So every 2 to 3 steps, I try to get another snapshot of where the guys are coming from, and as you get it, just trying to score with it.
And AP, I mean, you talk about the fact that you prided yourself on not going down, not letting one guy take you down. What goes? Because I mean, I can only imagine what's going on in the minds of a DB, a linebacker, so anybody with the opposite color jersey on when Adrian Peterson is coming at him. But before you make impact, are you saying to yourself, look, I mean, I do this to everybody. I'm doing this for my team, because people talk about business decisions where everybody that tackled you had to make a business decision, AP, and last time I checked, their business went out of business after they got done dealing with you.
Yeah, man. And, just stand on track. Because it's a lot. Anytime you carry the ball, it's a lot, because you have 11 guys who are trying to come and take you out. So it's a lot that's going through your mind, setting up your guys to be in position. It's scoring. The guy shooting out your legs low, protecting your body. Because I always again tell a lot of running backs that I speak with is learn how to protect yourself, because your antennas got to be up, and your antennas, I mean by awareness, because you're gonna have guys unblocked, which is fine. I always tell guys that before you get the ball, you should expect anything to happen, because you never know what's going to happen. So your antennas should always be up, because if a guy comes through, you got to make a quick move, stiff arm, drop the shoulder, spin out of it, burst, set the guy up. So it's a lot going on in your mind. And I love it because there's nothing like it.
Here on ESPN Coastal, our greatest college running backs ever bracket for the month of March is underway. You can vote on a couple of first-round matchups here on ESPN Coastal on Twitter. We're thrilled to be chatting with Adrian Peterson, one of the greatest players in college football history. And AP, I wanted to get a couple of picks. We got about 30 seconds left. First, I'll give you an update. D'Angelo Williams, just an all-time star. You are currently leading him 97% to 3%. With over 130 votes. Let me get, and boy, these are tough. I mean, I hate to put you on the spot. Better college running back, Jim Brown or Ladainian Tomlinson, AP?
No, I wasn't able to see live games of Jim Brown, so I can't speak. And that's what I like is LT used to told it, man. He used to told it. So all my backs, man. And I see the list, man. The list is amazing. So I'm just glad to be on the list, man.
And something tells me you'll be advancing, you'll be around, and you'll be in this thing for quite some time. A great perspective, again, from one of the all-time best football players the sport has ever seen, one of the all-time best dudes as well. Adrian, thanks so much for your perspective and a few minutes on the show, man. We always enjoy it.
Appreciate you guys, man. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you so much, Adrian Peterson. And Ben, woo! D'Angelo Williams a stud, but AP, you don't want that first round matchup with AP. This is a guy that is, you and I have talked about it without question. One of the greatest players, running backs ever. Really enjoy chatting with him. Great perspective as always.
Yeah, and I can appreciate AP from not even being able to answer. Listen, man, I love he loves Adrian. I mean, he loves Ladainian, but never got to see Jim Brown. That's a man that's very humble.
BJ, a potential Adrian Peterson v. Adrian Peterson final.
I mean, that would be something, man. I mean, look,
Vikings, baby.
Yeah, we've speculated about, what could from a voting standpoint, what could a Georgia Southern Adrian Peterson versus Georgia Herschel Walker matchup potentially look like?
No. According to Cody, Saquon's going to upset Herschel Walker in the next round.
Yeah, that would surprise me. Not unless PJ can get on there and vote like 2,000 times.
In-state like Barstool account takes the Twitter poll over and retweets it, then maybe.
Yeah. But great stuff from AP. We'll come back. Craziness, obviously surrounding the Rush Probst situation over in Valdosta. We'll talk about that next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Monday afternoon. A lot to get to here on the show. We will chat with Sean Quinn, Savannah State head football coach, coming up in hour 2 as the Tigers play this weekend. Nick Suss of the Clarion Ledger here in hour 3 as Ole Miss is set to start spring football. Could they be a sleeper in the SEC West? And we want you to continue to go to ESPN Coastal on Twitter and vote in our brackets. These are opening round matchups of the greatest running backs. I think we, Ben, helped with the first, second, and third seeds. Christian filled out the rest. Cody nodding, so I guess he had some input there. But you can vote. Okay, now the nod has gone from up and down, left to right, no input. So you can vote. Again, Adrian Peterson off to a huge start, but obviously it's been a crazy couple of weeks around, Rush Propst, the infamous high school football coach, and there's, I guess, an alleged video, no actual kind of video confirmation, but a recording, an alleged video of just all kind of craziness being discussed, being talked about. Again, allegedly been including Georgia and Alabama possibly having ways to pay players and things that kind of, sound the alarm when you think about some of the college football improprieties that have long been speculated and kind of talked about. It's one thing for the rest of us to talk about it. You've lived it. You've seen it. I mean, I know you played 20 years ago, but in your mind, when you think about, allegations and the possibility of college football having kind of this crazy underworld and kind of all kind of stuff happening, do you think that's overblown? Do you think it's under discussed? Do you think it's out there? Kind of what's your perspective on all of it?
Oh, I never ever think it's discussed enough because for the simple fact that, I mean, people don't care when it's smaller schools, when it's bigger schools, big names, bigger, big time programs. BJ is always going to be, it's funny. It's like, we discussed this before. Coach Rush is one of those guys to where you had a chance to make him go away, but you didn't let him go away despite all the bad behavior, despite everything he done, 2 families, all these different things, telling other people to not, interview people so he can get jobs. BJ, what's dangerous about that is if I show bad behavior, bad judgment, bad choices, nothing happens, okay, then you're seemingly saying it's okay for me to do what I'm doing. And I think in a situation like this, at first, he'll be, quote, loyal to his favorite team. But BJ, self-preservation is something that we all have given the situation. And I don't know what's going on with Coach Rush. I don't know if what he's saying is, but the problem isn't true. That's the crazy part. We don't know if what he's saying isn't true. Now, if it wasn't true, you move on from it. He's still a big-time high school head coach. He's still a big name in the coaching, carousels, of high school football. And he was opened up to the infrastructure of some of these schools. I do not know if what he's saying is true. But, BJ, look at the timing. You see the situation that's going with Tennessee. Then we move on. Then you got Les Miles. A couple of days later, now you can. So because people's minds are on it, it's probably why he did it. And I don't know. I am not indicting Coach Kirby Smart of Georgia or Nick Saban of Alabama. I do not know what these men do. But when you start naming names, that puts the person you naming at risk as well as what they're doing currently. So I just think that because you're talking about a dude, BJ, who if you ever needed somebody to speak up on your behalf, Coach Rush will be the last person you go. You do not want him doing it, but he's still relevant. See, that's the thing. He's not a nobody. He's not a person on Twitter who has a burner account. And that video was wild. But I think he's talking about an underworld known as college recruiting that if we really dug into it, BJ, we wouldn't be shocked of what is going on. We would be shocked who's doing it. And like I said, I don't know what's going to come from this. It might end up being much ado about nothing.
But let me ask this, Ben, and I mean, I don't want to be naive, okay? I don't want to be the naive college football fan that, still views the game the same way now that I did when I was 12 years old. But everybody thinks about all the, again, allegations around players and programs from over the years. You mentioned there's some allegations about Tennessee that were out, and it was real funny. Everybody talking about the McDonald's bags, and you got cash in it. But I mean, come on, man, we're not living in a world, right, where it's like you score 3 touchdowns, you go, behind the corner, and you get the bag with $500. I mean, that's not what we're talking about, is it?
It could be, BJ. I mean, think about this. Somebody said this. For everything we talk about as far as like these big time traditions at these big time colleges, You can have another tradition saying, okay, this is the other side of it. And I'm not just, even my alma mater, even the SMUs of the world, or Miami back in the day with the death penalty, all this stuff. And it's almost like, because we don't talk about it, it's that don't ask, don't tell type thing. We're not going to talk about what goes on. Recruiting is the lifeblood of every program. I don't know what it takes to be the #1 recruiting class in the country year in and year out. I know it is rough, but think about this, BJ. Forget being #1, being the last team standing, right? That's one part. Alabama, college football national champions. Got it. It is something to say when you are the #1 recruiting class in the country. Players want to be a part of it. Coaches want to be a part of it. Universities want to be a part of it. What does it take to do it? I don't know. Now, I was a part of the #1 recruiting class back in 2000. When they recruited me, I did not play quarterback. They didn't even throw the ball to the tight end with Steve Spurrier, but I was a part of it. And the thing about it is, it makes you feel a certain way when you a player and all you did was get recruited. Nowadays, I mean, BJ, when people use the words unlimited resources, a lot goes into those words. And when you think about the people that run recruiting, boosters, donors, AKA no responsibility, can't get caught, nothing can happen to them. So, excuse me, we'll see what happens with this Coach Rush. But it's like I said, BJ, if I don't want Coach Rush to have any influence, I must make him go away. Look at his past. Why would I want to have anything to do? But look at what he's affecting. Not just Alabama and Georgia, Hoover High School, the touchdown club, everything he's ever touched, he's trying to light it on fire. And that's what's dangerous about a coach like him, because he's good enough of a coach to still get a job, but he's bad enough of a liar to not trust anything he say, yet I'm letting his production, outweigh his bad behavior. And BJ, because of who it is, because he's been on features and 30 for 30, all this stuff, he has credibility in that regard, even if you can't really take his word. But in this case, because he's naming names, I think this could potentially lead to an investigation, and I'm scared to say of what could possibly come out of this.
Well, I guess, to ask a follow-up to that, and you keep going back to the Tennessee stuff just because it was in the news, and, so many programs in terms of the paying players or paying recruits or cheating in recruiting have been indirectly, even if it's just, comments in forums or on message boards, or people talking, have been a part of this conversation macro. Would anything surprise you in college football? I mean, just given how big and powerful and financially viable the product is?
No, because look at what one player can do for a school. You don't think Texas A&M still using Johnny Manziel's images and all that kind of stuff? You don't think that Reggie Bush, who finally got invited back to USC? Look at what one player, not a class. People go, why you need 25 guys? Because you need one to be the guy, to be the face. And if he's ever been the face of college football, you can use that for years to come. And I think, BJ, it's enticing. It's like I always tell you, we can be a part of an environment to where we're trying to shift the environment. But the only way you can shift it is be in it. And once you in it, before you can shift it, they're going to try to groom you. And a lot of this is just a culture of what goes on in recruiting. And like I said, if I go to the University of Florida, they'll ask me about Tank Black, had nothing to do with it. But that's what people don't realize about the University of Florida. Remember back when East Bay, BJ, everybody could buy the jersey. You could buy your favorite. Well, Florida was the only team you could only buy 3. Because of Tank Black, you could only buy 96, like number 7 and like 00 or something. It's almost like we don't realize how much this stuff affects today's recruiting. But what do you do, BJ? Like, and I'm just using them as an example. If I'm a big time coach at a big time university, and boosters are coming at me to get players, how do I really tell them no? I want to tell them no. I do want to tell them no. But we're going to be number 10 in recruiting if I do that. Because sometimes the perception outweighs the reality. The reality of it is you might not win with a #1 recruiting class, but when the last time a number 1, 2, 3, or top 5 recruiting class didn't win the Natty? To me, that's what you got to have in order to be one of the last 4 teams standing. So look at what you up against, and public perception drives everything. We'll see what comes from it, BJ. But like I said, Coach Rush is just, to me, what's scary. If this becomes ugly, Watch how many other coach rushes come out the woodwork. I'm telling you, he will open up a can of worms that it might be ugly for college football.
A lot of chaos, needless to say, surrounding the situation the last couple of weeks there with Rush Probst at Valdosta. But yeah, the latest developments, allegedly from an alleged video, a lot there, needless to say. We'll come back with more 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Monday afternoon. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop. Hope you're doing well. Again, want you to go to ESPN Coastal on Twitter. That is at ESPN Coastal, and vote. There are a number of pairings up for our round 1 matchups in the bracket of the greatest college running back ever. And Adrian Peterson leading D'Angelo Williams about 98% to 2%. But you have some fascinating matchups there. Gale Sayers, Walter Payton, Travis Etienne, Archie Griffin. Again, the question we asked AP, Ben, Ladainian Tomlinson, Jim Brown. I don't know how you do this, but you got to figure it out. I guess we'll get into it as well later in the show, but go vote ESPN Coastal. Ben, this from our buddy D. Orlando Ledbetter of the AJC. 29 Georgia players. Now, those are guys who either played high school in the Peach State or went to college here, invited to the combine. And we could run through the full list, but just wanted to give you a couple of highlights. 3 guys from the 912. Richard LeCount out of Georgia, Ernest Jones out of South Carolina, and Jamin Davis out of Kentucky. Richard LeCount played at Liberty County. You had Jamin Davis play at Long County, and then you had I'm getting my names confused. You had Ernest Jones play at Ware County. I mean, I'm not Kevin. I can't do the cities, the counties, the populations, but 3 guys from the 912, which is really cool. But it is absolutely staggering to see the talent that comes out of the state of Georgia, not just Metro Atlanta, of course, Metro Atlanta, but the entire state year in and year out. And this draft is just another example.
BJ, what I love the most about this is, number one, I mean, shout out to D. Orlando. I mean, he told us one time, I mean, you know, it was stat guy and different things. But I think what I love the most is the diversity of the college they go on to. You see Minnesota, Michigan State, Duke, Kentucky, Ohio State. You know, you see in Kent State, Stanford, East Carolina, you know, Alabama, Alabama, University of Alabama, Birmingham. I mean, Florida State, Notre Dame. I think what you're seeing now is, you know, not just the diversity of these players, but the diversity of their thinking. I mean, if you were Rashad Bateman, you're going from Georgia to Minnesota, you know, which means now you become like that bridge of, oh yeah, man, you can make it if I've done it. 29 guys, which means the hardest thing to do and the only way to go to the NFL is through college. But Rashad Bateman, I mean, he was the best receiver for Minnesota when he was there. And BJ, you mentioned the names like Richard LeCount, you know, you're talking about Ernest Jones and those guys. But what I'm always excited for is having the opportunity to continue your athletic career professionally. 29 guys out of representing all these different schools, different conferences shows that, number one, I will put the state of Georgia high school football up against Florida, up against Texas, up against California. And I think we got the most drafted players per capita or something like that. We talk about and I always say this. Yes, I went to the University of Florida, but I represent the great state of Georgia of high school football, and I root for guys. I root for guys for 2 reasons, well, 3 reasons. 1, if you play for them boys, right? 2, because you're a college football player, and 3, man, you represent the great state of Georgia as far as high school goes. And these guys coming from representing all parts of the state. I know we get caught up in the Trevor Lawrences of the world, BJ, and the Justin Fields because of their position. But they're just two of 29. This thing is cornerbacks, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, linebackers. So to be able to have 29 guys, those are the stats. Because when people saying 29 guys in the 2021 draft from the state of Georgia get an opportunity to hear their name called, and 2 of them are going to be in the top 10. 2. So I just think that when people ask, why do you go to college when less than 7% of college, 7% of high school athletics, and that's all high school athletics, go to college. 7%. That's every high school sport. Less than 1% go pro. 29 guys from the state of Florida in that less than 1% get a chance. I mean, that just shows, number one, that y'all not just athletes, but number 2, like I said, BJ, I would put the state of Georgia. Number 1, the state of Georgia don't got the numbers that Texas, California, Florida have just from a number standpoint, and we still doing it. We talk about 20 million versus 40 million. We right at little over 10 million. So I'm just saying, Georgia's getting it done. Shout out to those coaches. Shout out to those teams, those states. Those cities and small towns. So yeah, I'm happy for those guys. But 29, wow, that's pretty impressive.
Listen, I know producer Cody played in a hotbed of high school football down there on Space Coast. You think about the state of Florida, South Florida, Central Florida, the Panhandle, the First Coast. I mean, Florida right down the road has incredible high school football. But you're right, man. You look at what Georgia has done, and I think the reputation has only grown and expanded over the last 20 years, 15 years, last decade. The 912, again, 3 guys. You think about Jamin Davis, Ernest Jones, Richard LeCount, going to have a chance to hear their names called, going to be a part of this virtual combine. It is widespread. There's not only great talent, but there's great depth. And like you said, man, the state of Georgia is going to get a number of dudes from the state of Georgia, the University of Georgia is going to get a number of dudes from the state of Georgia. Look, you're going to be able to keep a lot of that talent home. Auburn's going to come in. Florida and Florida State are going to come in. Clemson's going to come in. But I also think if you're Jeff Collins and you're Georgia Tech, and I think they've done a much better job, a really good job the last couple of years of recruiting the state, your backyard, Metro Atlanta. The beauty of the state of Georgia is much like the state of Florida, and you have a lot of programs. The Big Ten, Ohio State comes down to Florida. I think the state of Georgia can kind of be the starting point, Ben, for 8, 9, 10 programs at the highest level of college football.
Absolutely. And BJ, something you said before the show, I think is prevalent. People are saying, man, how does Georgia Tech compete with Georgia? All Georgia Tech got to do is make up in their mind they know who they are. That's it. That has nothing to do with the field. We are Georgia Tech. Period. We in Atlanta, really in Atlanta. And that's what separates certain programs is the mindset. You're freaking Georgia Tech. Joe Hamilton. I mean, come on, man. I mean, you talk about Calvin Johnson, and that's just 2 guys. I just think that, and something you said, BJ, when you think about these colleges and universities in the state of Georgia, they got to start looking at their state like Florida. Say, hey man, I got everything I need right here in my state. Georgia, you do not have to look outside of your state for the talent that you need to go out there and make your program become what it's becoming. So it used to be a time, BJ, that you can look on every college or university that has football. It's somebody there from the state of Florida. I think Georgia's about to be like that. You're going to have a person from Georgia on every single school, because what happens is when we start going to these other schools and we realize, oh, man, if you're good enough, they can find you. You're going to start saying it's 29 players from the state of Georgia in a pandemic-stricken season. Remember that. Some of these teams barely had a whole season. Justin Fields didn't have the same amount of games as Trevor Lawrence. He's still going to go top 10. I'm just saying, if you are from the state of Georgia and think I got to go to the University of Georgia to get noticed, no, that's 29 guys. Out of all the 29, they were 5 or 6 of them from Georgia. I see Georgia Tech. I see Duke, Clemson, Minnesota, Ohio State, Stanford. So shout out to those parents for doing a great job with these young men. But if you are one of those 29 guys, make sure you pay it forward, man. If your name does get called, and even if it doesn't, say, oh, it was still worth the ride, BJ, because most guys won't even forget a second look. They won't even get a first look. 29 guys got a chance to hear their name called come to 2021 draft.
And I do want to reshare, again, I think expectations are very high from all 3 of our guys out of the 912 who are going to have an opportunity to take part in this. You guys know how I feel about Richard LeCount, one of the great safeties in Georgia history. What a star. What a playmaker, has been a real leader for that program. Ernest Jones has been amongst the most productive players in the country since he stepped foot on the campus at South Carolina. He is a big-time baller, but we mentioned it and wanted to share it for folks who didn't see it. Todd McShay's latest mock draft, he has Jamin Davis going in the first round. Out of Long County, out of the Ludowici, Hinesville area. He has Jamin Davis, the linebacker out of Kentucky, being taken 32nd by the Tampa Bay Bucks. So a really cool distinction there for that young man.
Wait a minute, BJ. So but the thing is this, the greatest thing that happened for Jamin Davis, BJ, is Levante David. People always say, well, what kind of linebacker I'm looking for? I'm looking for a guy that can cover tight ends. Go back to the Super Bowl. They told Levante David, we're going to put you on Travis Kelce and we're going to trust the result. Well, they end up getting the dub. If you got a chance to see that Kentucky defense, there was a 3 or 4 game span. They were literally winning games because of the defense. Jamin had a lot to do with that, and I'm happy for guys. I could care less about the University of Florida when it comes to guys having their dreams come true. I want every last guy to have a chance to have their dreams come true. And BJ, that would be incredible, because it's something about being from the South, going to college in the South, playing your pro career in the South. But I'm rooting for him. And if Levante David gonna cost a little bit too much money in free agency, I'd rather get me a fresh young Levante David, just first name Jamin, last name Davis, out of Kentucky. I think that'd be a great fit to go him and Devin White. Oh my God.
It's going to be a great draft, and the draft, as D. Orlando Ledbetter pointing out, going to be filled with guys who played high school football and college football in the state of Georgia. Something to think about as we look ahead to this fall. We have great football on Saturdays in this state. We have great football on Fridays in this state, and you see it in the NFL draft. We'll come back with more 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. All right, I'm going to try to read and talk as I give us some updates here on the ESPN Coastal Greatest College Running Backs Ever bracket, some of the round one matchups. We'll see if my brain can handle it here. Ben, as we mentioned, we had the legend Adrian Peterson on earlier. Always enjoy his perspective. He's leading D'Angelo Williams 97% to 3%. That's in the opening round matchup there. You have Eddie George versus Charles White in a 4-5 matchup. Your guy, Eddie George, at 86% with the commanding lead there. Ladainian Tomlinson versus Jim Brown, a 3-6 matchup. LT at 58%, so maybe a mild upset happening there. Look, Ben, this is what it is, man. Travis Etienne is my guy. Archie Griffin versus Travis Etienne, a 2-7. Archie's at 74%. Kind of is what it is. 2 Heismans.
I mean, the thing about this is, though, BJ, okay, let's just go ahead and put this out. We have to do the disclaimer. There is no wrong answer here. Like, this is one of those things, BJ, to where you say to yourself, okay, every athlete has some of us have a lot of vanity, but some of us definitely have a little vanity, a little ego. Sometimes, BJ, just making a list, because we talk about breaking down this list. It's a lot of people didn't even make the list that were worthy to be on the list. I mean, at first, we didn't even have Archie Griffin on somebody. Wait a minute, you can't. We just were forgetting. We get caught up in the, who you like, who you grew up, who you admire, and you just forget about some names, BJ. But yeah, I mean, D'Angelo Williams, though, I'm sorry, he didn't say. D'Angelo was an incredible player at Memphis.
Yeah.
I want to say his name, Robert Thomas. We used to call him Robo. He was out. He was the fullback that used to block for D'Angelo. He came as a free agent to Tennessee, and BJ. He used to talk about D'Angelo but what, and rightfully so. But dude, with all due respect to D'Angelo, who's a great all-time player.
He drew the legend. I mean, he drew Adrian Peterson in the first round. Let me give you a couple of matchups. This is, the 2 seed Walter Payton, the 7 seed Gale Sayers. Walter Payton at 62%. I know your friends.
Both Hall
oh man,
Chicago Bears.
And I know you have a great perspective on Walter, of course, being friends with his son Jared Payton, who you played with. Reggie Bush, man, George Rogers with the Heisman from up in South Carolina. I remember producer Jim one time sent me a picture. He's with George Rogers. He's got the Heisman. He's holding the Heisman. Reggie Bush leading George Rogers 90% to 10%. Saquon Barkley and Marcus Allen. Saquon Barkley, that's a 5-4. Saquon leading 61% to 39%. That's a little interesting. And then Ben, Herschel Walker and Emmitt Smith are matched up in the first round. Herschel currently at 87% there in the Georgia-Florida matchup.
I mean, it's gonna be hard to beat Herschel. I don't care who you are. You talk about the gold standard, playing the running back position, BJ. But once again, this has less to do with who makes it to the next round and the fact that you made it to this list, because we forget how great some of these players not were, but are. They the truth.
Oh, man, just an incredible look at some of the best to ever do it in college football. Go to ESPN Coastal on Twitter and vote. Again, thanks to Adrian Peterson for joining us. Always a thrill to chat with him. Just a true superstar on the field and off the field, and always enjoy his perspective. We'll come back. Sean Quinn going to join us in hour 2. The Tigers, they play football this weekend. We'll talk about that. We'll take 3 next. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, ESPNCoastal.com. So glad to have you back here with us, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Monday afternoon. Excited to chat with Sean Quinn coming up in just a little bit, head coach of the Savannah State Tigers, as they have a football game this weekend. Those guys have waited a long time to play some football, put in a lot of work on the field, off the field to be able to play some football. So looking forward to that. We'll chat with Nick Suss from the Clarion Ledger. Ole Miss, could they be kind of the X factor in the SEC, in the SEC West? Potentially, we'll get some perspective on that, but we'll send it back to the studio, Ben, as we prepare to take 3 here on a Monday afternoon.
Gentlemen, take 1. We need to educate somebody. At Salman Anwar on Twitter is getting drugged. BJ, before we do this, do you know what getting ratioed on Twitter means?
It means people are like responding because you said like you're getting more feedback of people saying, hey, bad take, than people retweeting or liking your thing.
Yeah, more comments than likes or retweets, which means you said something that a lot of people disagree with. He said, quote, what is something the U.S. does better than the U.K., ? Because I am genuinely can't think of something. So, I mean, a lot of responses like, have you heard of the moon? Because we've been there and y'all haven't. Have you heard of barbecue ribs? Have you heard of Hollywood? So a lot of responses that had me cracking up. I was curious, just being fair, because he asked a fair question. He said, can you think of something? And we just need to help him out a little bit.
I mean, given where we are, right? We're in the deep South. I think barbecue is a good way to go. We were talking about it on the show last week. I mean, so many different ways to do it. And what's been neat, I mean, I know this is a side story, but my son has gotten to the point like in the last year or so where he really likes barbecue. So we've been able to do things more than just eat chicken tenders. You know, for the first like 5 to 6 years of your life, all you can do is eat chicken tenders. That's it. Yeah, it's emotional, Christian. Well, now my son is into barbecue, so we can try different spots and different techniques, and he'll even try different sauces. So look, yeah, I mean, I'm sure they have some really delicious, really well done entrees over there, but it does not get any better than a Saturday, Sunday afternoon, and you're doing some work with the meat, and you have a slab of ribs, or you have, a barbecue sandwich. And I'm a barbecue sandwich guy. Like, I know people have their own thing. To me, if you just go with pulled pork and you just put it on a piece of bread, that's as good as it gets. So I'll go with the different varieties too. I know we're on the air in South Carolina and in Georgia.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what y'all are. But South Carolina's got a different taste than Georgia's got a different taste than Alabama. So I'm just going to go with barbecue, man. Look, you cannot do better than some deep South Southern barbecue. Boom. That's the answer. Ben,
you care to help Salman out here?
I mean, Salman. I mean, man. In the words of BJ and Kevin, that's embarrassing. Number one, I mean, I think the U.S. men's soccer team is better than the U.K. soccer. I mean, if I'm not,
there's a few. If you're talking about the United Kingdom, a few different teams.
This is why I say it, BJ. If it's even questionable. If our team is questionable, but number two, I know you're talking about food. Okay, we're not even gonna talk fighting. We're gonna leave that alone. I'm gonna leave that alone. Sports though is the easiest way to go. It's the easiest way to go, right? BJ, you talking about food? I mean, what? I mean, obviously the UK, what they play soccer over there. They don't have what they got rugby. We'll beat the hell out of them. If we had a US men's rugby team, we'll beat the hell out of UK. I don't care how they feel about it. And number two, Christian, at the end of the day, when you start saying things like, what does the America do better than the UK? Close your eyes and point. What does the UK do better than America? What? Nothing. They don't do anything better than us. And the people say, well, UK want to go to the moon. No, they probably couldn't go. Don't give me that. They don't want to go. No, they probably couldn't. Don't give me that.
Christian, I'm gonna plead ignorance, and this is probably a kind of a bad interruption. But when we say the UK,
that's a lot of different countries.
Yeah, like what all are we including in the UK? Because England is a country. Great Britain is kind of a
Okay. Here's the thought.
Is it Great Britain the actual land?
No.
Great Britain is just the land. United Kingdom is the conglomerate of countries, i.e. Wales, Ireland, Scotland, England.
Christian, I know what we do better than the UK.
Tell me.
We make better movies. You know how I know? Where's Idris Elba from? He's from the UK.
Oh, I mean, yeah, nobody compares to us except maybe Bollywood in terms of movie making.
I'm just saying Idris and David Ugler and all these guys, they're from the UK. They come over here to be stars. They say, well, why don't you try to be a star, in Britain? Well, exactly.
Well, Cody pulled up the Olympics results, and the U.S. has over 1,000 gold medals. Great Britain has 263. So
that's embarrassing.
There's another thing. So anyway, I think the moon was probably my favorite one, though. Just the damn moon. What's up? Up in there? Because we did it in the 60s.
They got 200 and some medals. That's embarrassing.
Yeah. Take two. Which team is off to the most impressive start in the SoCon? Not the best start record-wise, but the most impressive start.
All right, and because of the way you phrased it, I will say it's VMI. And I do have to give a shout-out to Chattanooga, man. Chattanooga's playing good football. Beat Wofford by a couple of scores in their first game in week 2. Their week 1 game was had to be canceled, but beat Wofford and then back and forth. Great game with the Citadel on Saturday. I actually watched it on ESPN+. If you have a chance to watch some of the SoCon football and FCS football on ESPN+, I encourage you to do that. But that was a back and forth game. You had a penalty in overtime, the second session of overtime that allowed Chattanooga to move closer to the goal line. They scored a touchdown, down 1. They went for 2. I mean, that's gutsy. You go for 2, and they ran. You guys probably know the name of it better than me, but when you have a tight end and the tight end runs and it's like a little shovel pass, a little 2-yard shovel pass, and that was called at the perfect time, a great play. So Chattanooga's 2-0 with a win over top 10 Wofford. But I think it's VMI because expectations were that VMI was probably going to bring up the bottom of the league. VMI back in their opener against Furman got their first win over a ranked team in 20 years. That was their first.
Wild, right, BJ? Because they arguably have the best quarterback in the conference, so it's wild that they reviewed that way.
Yeah, they have Reese Yadinsky, who you mentioned in a story on Southern Pigskin, is going to grad transfer to Maryland this fall. So he's an all-SoCon quarterback who's playing a full SoCon league in the spring and is going to be with Maryland in the fall. But he throws it all over the place. But they had. I hate to say they got lucky because I don't believe in that. I think you work hard, you make plays, but they recovered a fumble as Furman was driving for a potential game-winning field goal or an attempt at a game-winning field goal, got that dub, and then you thought, okay, they got the big win. What are they going to do for an encore? Can they maintain it? They had a game where they were up 28-0 in the first half over Western Carolina on Saturday. So shout out to VMI, Scott Wackenheim, the coach up there. That's a program that, struggled through a lot of the early 2000s. They're playing really good football right now.
Of course it's VMI, BJ, man. I don't think you're stressing it enough. I mean, VMI hasn't been 2-0 since 2005. Since 2005. They haven't started the league 2-0. Then they snapped a 17-game losing streak against Western Carolina. 17 games. And BJ, this is what you're gonna love the most. BJ, I'm embarrassed by you. Why is VMI doing the best? Because what's the name of their kicker? Jerry Rice. That is their kicker's name. I'm just saying, when you got a kicker Jerry Rice, you better be clutch. So for me, VMI,
well done.
Starting out 2-0, beat Furman, who was picked to win it. Snapped a 17-game losing streak against Western Carolina. And listen, BJ, the one thing that breeds confidence is winning. So for the rest of the SoCon that got VMI on the schedule, I know they were chopping up as an L. Yeah, it might be an L for y'all because VMI, they coming.
Yeah, Chattanooga does need some credit, though. I mean, Ben, Devontae Maxwell is a defensive end for Chattanooga. Tell me if this stat line is pretty good. They've only played 2 games in the spring. Defensive end, 16 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, and a game-winning forced fumble.
That's a season. That's a season worth of stats. But I will say this about the SoCon. To say that their brand of football is exciting is an understatement. I mean, things happened really, really quickly. That Citadel game, it was just going back and forth.
Dude, Furman was down 14 with 6 minutes left, found a way to score 2 touchdowns, force overtime against Samford, coached by Chris Hatcher, former Georgia Southern and Valdosta State head coach. They get into overtime, they score. Samford drives down, they fumble at the 5-yard line. I mean, it was a drama-filled Saturday.
There you go. Catch the SoCon again and go. BJ has a lot of great stories up, southernpigskin.com for a lot of SoCon coverage there. All right, take 3. Today, National Women's Day. So I wanted to get y'all's favorite United States women's national team moment, because when you talk about a team on the national scale for the United States, I don't know that there's any that can really compare. Maybe the men's basketball team in terms of highlights and recognition, but there was a while where it was really bad. The women's national team since pretty much the mid-'90s has been the dominant force in their sport. So what's your favorite moment throughout the years from the women's national team?
Yeah, a number of them, and yes, International Women's Day. Thank you to all of our all the women out there. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you for all that you do. To me, I think about a couple. We'll always remember it was really neat from a local standpoint when you had Morgan Bryan play in the World Cup. St. Simon's Island native from a Frederica Academy, and she remains one of the best players in the world. But to see her out there was really cool. But I've talked to you guys about this because we mentioned, and I mentioned it a couple of days ago when we had the question about Wilt Chamberlain's performance. What are records that will never be broken? What are iconic performances that are kind of dumbfounding? In the 2015 Women's World Cup final, Team USA played Japan. Carly Lloyd is one of the best players in the world. She scored a hat trick in the first 15 minutes of the game.
Yeah, didn't she dunk on him from midfield?
Yeah. Her last goal was from 50 yards out. But in the biggest game every 4 years in the sport. So the World Cup is every 4 years. The championship, the final, is obviously what it's all about. You're on the biggest stage internationally in the sport, and a hat trick is pretty unheard of in soccer, especially international soccer at that level. You may have a collegiate hat trick or a hat trick in a regular season game, but to have a 3-goal performance in the World Cup final is unheard of, and she did it in 15 minutes. And if I'm remembering this correctly, she scored twice, which is called a brace. She had a brace in the first 5 minutes. So it's you sit down. Oh, okay, here's the game. Carly Lloyd scores. Okay, what is this? No, she scored again. Not a replay. She scored again. Then she went and dropped the full hat trick 15 minutes in. That is unheard of. That is absurd. I don't even know what the parallel to that would be. I mean, would the parallel to that be, because it's easier to score a touchdown than score a goal, would a parallel to that be 5 touchdowns in the first quarter of a Super Bowl?
Probably like Steve Young, 6 touchdowns, and they were done in the third quarter. Maybe as close as you get.
Yeah. So shout out to Carly Lloyd. She's been one of my favorite players, and that was an absolutely iconic showing.
For me, BJ, I mean, it's a moment that gets looked past when you talk about women, and women are always doing it for more than just themselves. When you talk about the U.S. women's national team, they sue their employees for equal pay and things of that nature. But this is after the 2019 World Cup. In the locker room when they're celebrating, everybody was
yes.
This is the thing. And Christian knows this. Sometimes, man, you just want to let it out. Women have to deal with so much of that's unladylike, or that's not how women act, or let's show good sportsmanship. The U.S. women's national team is the best women's soccer team on the planet. They finally got to let loose. And I know Alex Morgan and all those, women was in there, but I was happy for them because this is what men do, right? When they win something big, they
were going harder than any divisional round playoff team in baseball. They were going hard.
And the thing is, they're inspiring every young girl that ever been told you can't do this, you can't do that, you won't do this, you're not good enough, just to be able to let it all out. And they was unapologetic about it. When you talk, because how many people get asked about their celebration? U.S. women's national team. Hey, y'all shouldn't have. No, that's why we did it. We're giving permission to every other young girl who's been told you can't, you won't, you're not this, you're not. Yes, you are. And we're better than the men.
It was really cool seeing Kristen Dunn carrying double fisted Bud Heavies while she's celebrating.
And the thing is,
the World Cup was lit.
And somebody said this: if you've never celebrated anything, you've never won anything. If you've really, and to me, celebrating sports transcends gender. It shouldn't be about who's doing it. It shouldn't be about why they're doing it. They just won the World Cup, and they won it, BJ, in a way to where they always represent the U.S. in an incredible way, but they represent women in a even bigger way because they have to. They're always going to get singled out no matter what. They're not as good. Yes, they are good as the guys too. Thank God they don't play each other. We don't want to deal with that. But
it is amazing. We're bypassing a couple of pretty significant moments. I mean, I think number one for most people will always be 1999, Brandi Chastain ripping her uniform off.
Which people had something to say about that too.
I mean, let them say it. They won a World Cup. But my favorite will always be 2011 against Brazil. I don't know if you remember that game, BJ, but I was at a bar watching the game, and Brazil, Marta had scored, and they were up, and it just wasn't looking good for the United States. There were a lot of questionable calls from the officiating. Brazil taking a lot of dives and just laying on the ground for like 5 minutes at a time, which would eventually come back to bite them because in extra time, Megan Rapinoe from like 40 yards out with a pinpoint cross that Abby Wambach buries in the back of the net with her head. Yeah, I mean, that, like, I came up and I Larry Munson it. I broke a bar stool. I stood up and celebrated so hard. It fell back. It cracked.
Okay, Ben. Did you see that, Christian? We know Alex
Abby
Morgan.
Wambach, a Florida Gator. We get it.
And Alex Morgan's a Gator too, right?
Well, I mean, I
I
lost.
don't think Alex Morgan is. I just think Abby is.
Oh, Abby Wambach. Okay.
And then they tried to get him again in penalties. They said Hope Solo was coming off the line after she saved a PK, but we won that one too. But I mean, that one was just forever. There's just something different about being – all sports are great, but soccer in like the last few seconds when you need that goal and your team scores it, that's a different kind of release.
Well said. Yeah, some incredible memories. And the She Believes Cup, you just had that. So always a big fan of
domination.
Yep. The great work the U.S. women's national team does on and off the field. We'll come back with more 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. What's up? 3 and Out, rolling right along here on a Monday afternoon. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop, Christian Gokel, Cody Queen alongside. We are glad to be with you. We'll chat with Sean Quinn, head football coach at Savannah State. In about 15 minutes, Savannah State going to take on West Alabama in Mobile at Lad Peoples Stadium coming up this weekend. Really excited about that. So we'll get coach's perspective on the matchup and the lead up to that. But Ben, looking around college football nationally, and it's good to have spring ball back. You've either settled into spring football around college football, or you're on the horizon, on the cusp of starting here in a few days. You got some big-time quarterbacks to replace. Obviously, DJ Uiagalelei is lined up to replace Trevor Lawrence. You're talking about a 2 or 3 quarterback battle, from what I understand, to replace Justin Fields at Ohio State. Looks like Bryce Young is pretty clearly going to be the guy to replace Mac Jones. Historically, it's been hard to get a feel for how that goes. Normally it doesn't go well, but you've had, Oklahoma's been an example of recent success. One of the more fascinating historical examples to me is Tennessee, where Peyton Manning was all everything. Peyton Manning, of course, college football Hall of Famer, NFL legend. He leaves. T. Martin comes in. They go undefeated and win the national championship. So to me, T. Martin, one of the really underappreciated players in the history of college football. But for these programs, BYU clearly, but in our neck of the woods, you think about Alabama, you think about Clemson. What is the challenge, and what did you learn about transitioning forward from an iconic quarterback in 2003 when I believe the Gators had a true freshman in Chris Leak step in for Heisman Trophy runner-up Rex Grossman?
Make life easier for a younger guy. I mean, when you talk about BJ, you talk about DJ, you and those guys, all he has to do is continue from what's already been built. Florida was in a different situation because we was going from, Steve Spurrier to Ron Zook. So you got to factor that in. Rex Grossman was a Heisman Trophy candidate type quarterback. Going from that, and Chris Leak was a true freshman in 2003. So it depends on what you inherited and what they are inheriting as well. Like, it's one thing to fill the shoes of the guy who just left. But what type of team are you getting? Chris Leak, he had a veteran-laden team that had veterans in key spots, like offensive line, like tight end, like wide receiver, like running back, but he was still the guy that was going to make everything go, BJ. So for me, I just think that some guys are just in better situations. Like when you start saying 3 guys are going to try to replace Justin Fields, well, that means you don't have a guy right now. When you talk about DJU, well, he played last year, so he felt it. He just going to be the starting guy this year. For a guy like Chris Leak, what was different for him, coming into the season, he was not the starter. It was him and Eagle Martin. After we played Miami, he became the starter. After we went 3-3, he grew up. And after we went 3-3, he won his next 5 straight, with his first of that 5 being LSU at LSU. So when you talk about the growing pains that every player goes through, it has 1 to do with the quarterback, 2 with what he's inherited, 2, what does he have around him? Like you talk about Bryce Young. Bryce Young knows, okay, I got to go to Alabama to see how Alabama does things. Then I got to be able to, and let me say this too. Sometimes it's unfair to the player when you say they're stepping in, they're filling in for like, I don't think Mac Jones filled in.
I want to say that because that's a great point that you make, Ben. I know we've been fortunate to have John Brantley on the show a couple of times, and I always enjoy his candor and his perspective about, dude, you have to replace Tim Tebow. And it's like, I don't think we psychologically process what it's like for a 19 or 20-year-old to have to, read every newspaper, turn on the radio, open up a magazine, turn on the TV, and it's, you're replacing Tim Tebow. We chatted with Brad Johnson last year about Max Johnson stepping in at LSU. Dude, you're replacing ultimately Joe Burrow. I mean, do we fully appreciate kind of the legacy that these guys leave and how much pressure, aside from the physical game, right? Aside from throwing passes and just the psychological pressure of having to replace a Trevor or a Mac Jones or a Justin Fields or a player like that?
No, we don't. And the main thing is for these players, the quarterback position is so unique because nothing compares to it, because you get all the praise when you win and all the blame when you lose, BJ. Is can they go from comparing you to this person to you've made a name for yourself to stand by this person? Like Kyle Trask gets to stand by Tim Tebow and Danny Warfel because of how he ended up his career. He didn't win the Heisman like Steve Spurrier and those guys, but he wore Steve Spurrier's number. So when Steve Spurrier come out and say, hey, you did that number proud, that's what you're really doing. Because in the back of your mind, You leaving two legacies. One with the team you was on, and two what you did individually. You keep that on your mind because I didn't see Rex Grossman becoming the player that he became when he was at Florida, but he considered he still. I mean, before Kyle Trask, I think he had the most yards in one season. For Florida's quarterback. So I think that too, BJ, you're gonna learn a lot about a great player from what he has upstairs. Like Tua changed how we looked at quarterbacking at Alabama. We hadn't seen nothing like that. So Mac Jones, that's what he saw. Okay, I can do this. Could Mac Jones have done that without Tua? I don't know. But if I see it first, if you are a guy in Joe Burrow, right? Well, Joe Burrow went through the aches and pains of not having that good of a junior season, losing to Florida for a pick six the year before to come back and have the season he had. So I just think it always comes down to put your name in the conversation of the greatest to ever do it at your position. That is what you want to do. Regardless of how it doesn't matter if you're number 1, number 5, number 10, you want to say, we talk about this, BJ. Can we talk about your position without mentioning you when you came through there? That's what I think you're doing because we forget how great some of these players have been before. We don't talk about Charlie Ward enough at Florida State, and you can't do what he did in the time that he did it in the offense that he was running. So I just think that Bryce Young is Bryce Young, right? He's going to Alabama. But if he don't live up to it, they're gonna say,
The thing about these guys, I think about, and Spencer Rattler had to deal with it, but I think about Bryce Young and Trevor Lawrence or DJ Uiagalelei specifically. If you're DJ, not only are you replacing Trevor Lawrence, you're replacing Trevor Lawrence, Deshaun Watson, Taj Boyd. If you're Bryce
Kelly
Young,
Bryant went to the college football playoff.
Yeah, Kelly Bryant. If you're Bryce Young, you're looking back. Mac Jones has the single season passer rating record, and Tua Tagovailoa revolutionized Alabama football. Those are the two guys behind you. Just a lot of pressure. Pretty important spring practices coming up in places like Tuscaloosa, Alabama, in places like Clemson, South Carolina, Columbus, Ohio, with these big-time quarterbacks that have to be replaced. Savannah State's playing football this weekend. We'll talk about that with Sean Quinn next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live on the web, ESPNcoastal.com here on a Monday afternoon. A lot to get to here in the final hour. Coming up in the final hour, I should say, we'll chat with Nick Suss of the Clarion Ledger, talking Ole Miss football. They could be one of the more fascinating teams in the SEC. But, Ben, as we await Sean Quinn to join us, Savannah State going to play some football this weekend over in Mobile, Alabama, taking on West Alabama. Talk about this opportunity, Ben, and just how excited you think these guys are to get out there and play after such a long break.
I mean, BJ, this Saturday, you know what I'm saying, the Gulf Coast Challenge, West Alabama versus Savannah State. I'm happy for those guys. I'm happy for both programs because it's something to have patience when you're an adult. It's another thing to have patience when you're a student athlete and seemingly your livelihood got taken away from you because of a pandemic in 2020, BJ, and you stayed the course. Because the thing I look the most about Savannah State and West Alabama is how many cases was coming out there as far as like positive. You haven't heard a lot about it. That speaks to the coaching staff. That speaks to the due diligence of the health professionals and the players. But BJ, you know what it's like. BJ, you're a writer, and I hate to. You always say you don't have to compare it to writing, but we've taken writing away from you for the entire fall, which I don't even know how we would do that. And finally, you get to do it. It's like I'm so happy for those guys. I look at when it first got announced, BJ, something that Coach Quinn said. He said he's ecstatic. I'm ecstatic for these players too, BJ, because when you look at the fact that it's like your own showcase. It's what brand of football is Savannah State going to put out on the field? What brand of football is West Alabama going to put out on the field? You're going to get a chance to see it on Saturday, BJ. And dare I say, it ain't for the timid. If you want some, come get some. And it starts on Saturday. I'm so happy for both programs.
And you mentioned it, in addition to, the weight, what it's taken on the field, off the field. And here we'll get some perspective now from the man himself, Sean Quinn, head football coach at Savannah State, joins us here on the program. Coach, good afternoon. How are you?
Good, guys. How are you guys doing today? Good to talk to you. It's been a few moons since I've seen you. Ben, nice hat, by the way. Did you borrow that from Cam Newton? Looks good on you.
No, Coach. When I'm not on the show, man, I'm putting out forest fire. So me and Smokey, we do our thing.
Hey, look.
Yeah. Danger level high today, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, sir.
The hat has been a big point of emphasis over the last couple of weeks. But, Coach, you guys have football this weekend, taking on West Alabama over in Mobile. It's the Gulf Coast Challenge. How excited is your staff? How excited is your program, your players, for this opportunity this weekend?
We're fired up to have the opportunity to go compete. It's been quite a while. It's like, I got a movie theater by my house that just opened. And I can finally go back and see a movie. So it's kind of like one of those things you've been looking forward to. And football practice, Ben will tell you this, it's not a whole lot of fun if there's no end deal at the end of it where you got something to play for. So we've been doing that feels like literally almost 2 years. So to get to go play a game and play somebody who's really good, that we're excited to go in a great city of Mobile. It'll be a fun trip and really a neat thing for our guys because our freshmen get to do it and not lose any eligibility by doing it. So I think it's going to be good for us and helps us get ready for the fall.
Coach, the two greatest words in football, the two greatest words in sports is game week. I know when I play, people yelling it out. And the thing about it is bigger than game week, you guys made it. And Coach, you know how difficult it is now. We live in a technological world to where you got social media to everything that goes on around us, but you guys stayed the course. And I know you give that to your seniors, making sure that they resonating what you saying to the rest of the team. But to wait this long to finally get a chance to go out there and do what you love, Coach, man, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to forgive you guys, Coach, for the penalties. That's just excitement, Coach.
Yeah, we're excited to go. I tell you what, it's weird to be in game week. I got a knot in my stomach as we speak, so I'm excited to see where we're at and get going here. And Ben, we've checked. You do have some eligibility left, so we got the tight end Y dump in, so we're ready for you to come back and get that done.
Not the open field though. We don't need it in the open field for the simple fact that if I break a tackle, I got to show some athleticism. And as my mama told me this weekend, it's not my job to start embarrassing her now that my career is over. So I don't want to embarrass the family.
All right. Well, we look. If we can get some guys that can play with you, we'll be all right here and hopefully we can get down the red zone and then put you in there. So we've had a good week of practice and it's fun to be in game week and get going, man. It's we've been practicing for a while since middle of early February since signing date. So it's good to get to go out and compete. We got a couple games here. And it's kind of weird. We're getting ready for St. Patty's Day and then a football game at the same time. So a little different time and new world that we're in, but it's fun and exciting. And it'll be interesting to see how we go out and compete this Saturday.
And it's obviously been an unprecedented time. for your players, for your student athletes to stay the course as they have, for you and your coaches to continue to, be there for them and kind of talk about all the uncertainty and, help them through what's a difficult time for everybody. I mean, how much of a reward is this going to be to just have some normalcy, Coach, to coach football, to play football, to, to laugh, to get mad, to, celebrate. I mean, that's it. We take that stuff for granted, but you guys are going to have it on Saturday.
Oh yeah. I mean, you got to understand these guys, we've been tested upwards of 70 to 80 times, COVID tests we've been through and all the stuff they've been through and been sent home, then brought back, been in quarantine, had to wear masks everywhere. I mean, they haven't been able to be college students the way you normally are a college student. So I know our guys excited today. We were talking with the captains, what uniform we're wearing and all that good stuff. So it's been a long, drawn out process. And it's a little bit surreal, to be honest with you, to even get opportunity to play. So I'm excited. And as I talk about it with you guys, I'm getting that knot's getting a little bigger in my stomach. So I'm trying to think what we're going to call on third down and how we can find a way to slow the team we're playing down. They're a good football team.
Coach, one of the greatest things, two of the greatest things I've ever been given when it comes to football is my coach used to tell me you need to prove it and you need to negotiate it. You prove it Monday through Friday and you negotiate what you do on the field to get out there on Saturday. I don't think there is a team in college football that has proved it more than your squad, and I don't think it's a team that negotiated for what you guys are doing on Saturday more than your squad. When you guys, I know we keep talking about it, Coach, but forget the players for a second. Every coach has a routine, things they do, but you've had to get out of your routine. What is Saturday going to be like for Coach Sean Quinn getting up in the morning knowing, hey, man, we got football today?
Well, it's going to be exciting. I'm usually pretty on edge until I get to the stadium, and then I just tend to relax. So, last night I woke up in a cold sweat about 2 or 3 a.m. thinking about what we need to do on third down. But I'm excited. Just, it's weird. I mean, it's a whole different deal. We've been in spring football mode, and now we're going to fall mode. So it's just kind of jumping back and forth. And I think our players, it kind of hit them in the face. We practiced last night, and we went through some stuff on the opponent. And, the guy's like, man, Coach, it's finally here. And so, we've been practicing kind of with no end in sight. And so to have something there, it's nice. Be challenged because they're really good. And we want to go be competitive and play good football. So we'll have our hands full, and we're excited to go down there, though. And it's like a bowl game. So it's kind of a reward for our guys for all the stuff they've been through to this point. And we got a ton of freshmen who are going to play. So it'll be interesting to see how those guys do. Take the prom corsage off and put some shoulder pads on and go. So ought to be fun.
We're chatting with Sean Quinn, head football coach at Savannah State. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop here. Savannah State taking on West Alabama on Saturday at Lab People Stadium in Mobile. Let's talk about the game. What are you hoping to see from your guys, and what do you know about your opponent in West Alabama?
Well, they got to win Saturday. They run the football and throw it. They're really good offensively. Their defensive coordinator and I work together at Western Carolina. That league's a premier league. Obviously we'll be big underdogs going to game, which is good. Offensively, we're a lot farther ahead than we are on defense right now. So hopefully offensively, we'll be able to, go and do our stuff, run the football, and be able to, play our style of ball on both sides of the ball. And like I said, we got a lot of freshmen that are going to get a chance to play and put them in some different situations. So West Alabama is a spread offense, up tempo. They go fast. They scored 27 points and kind of sat on the lead. They were in the lead the whole time, and then, kind of played a conservative second half. And Brent Gilland, the head coach there, and I coached together at Georgia Southern, and he did a great job when I was there with them. He's a good football coach. They're really well coached, and their personnel is really good. Defensively, they're very similar to us. So it'll be kind of a mirror on defense and offense, two totally different styles. We're old school, and they're more cutting edge, new age. So it's kind of like, we're old classic jazz, and they're like the new alternative stuff. You put the long hair and ride a skateboard around town, listening to their stuff. So it'll be a good challenge. And, when I try to get these games, the thought was, just to try BJ to see where we're at and what we need to do to improve to try to be next year competitive to win our league and get in the playoffs and see where we're really at. And we've got some injuries, some guys out, so it'll be really interesting to see what these guys that step in there do. And I'm excited to see what these guys look like in live, because a lot of our guys have never played in a game. So that should be fun to just kind of see where they're at and where we are as coaches.
And Coach, you keep on mentioning that you guys going to play a lot of freshmen. How much better of a team is going to make you guys down the line to know these guys are getting quality snaps going up against guys who's, I got senior and junior next to their names?
Big time. We've got a couple freshman receivers that are going to start for us, and I'm really excited to see them under the lights. And there's guys, you use the term, you've heard it, gamers, and I'll be interested to see how these guys are. One thing's to practice, another thing to play in a game, and be interested to see, how they react when the lights are on and when you're in front of a crowd. So this will be the first time we've had actual fans in the stand for 18 months. We've scrimmaged some, and there hadn't been anybody there. So to get to have a great crowd there and play in that venue is a great venue, and to play in there with some fans, it'll be fun and hopefully have some energy in there.
I was going to say, you mentioned it a moment ago, college football is about experiences and to go to Lab Peoples, I believe, where they have the Senior Bowl and have a bowl game every year, to be in basically a bowl game of your own on Saturday. I mean, with the trip and, just getting to have a little bit of normalcy. You've been a part of some special games, special teams during your coaching career, but I'd imagine this has got to be one that's going to rank right up there.
Yeah, definitely. Because, the unique circumstances behind it. If you knew all the junk we had to do to get to this game and all the crap we had to deal with and just all the hurdles, there are more that I could write 3 books on it. And, there's just a lot of stuff that I won't even go into that's made it really a challenge beyond just COVID-19, just everything else. I'll say it's been one of the hardest experiences in my entire coaching career. And so to get a chance to finally get to a game, it's a relief to finally get to a game, and that's half the challenge sometimes.
Now, Coach, I know I ain't got no eligibility left, man. But I hear tomorrow, the Sean Quinn show with Coach Christian Gokel airs tomorrow night at 6 p.m. available on ESPN Coastal. You're not getting rid of Christian. If you haven't realized that yet, Chris, you're not getting rid of. But how excited are you tomorrow? Tomorrow night, you and Christian, y'all get to talk ball tomorrow at 6 p.m. on ESPN Coastal.
I'm excited. I know Christian, he said he hadn't been on a date in about 18 months. So what's one of my goals to help him get a date? I know his social life's he's in a slow time in his life. And so hopefully we can find somebody that's willing to date him. And that's part of my job on this show, is kind of coach him along and make him an attractive candidate. That'll be a lot of work, but I'm going to try hard. And but I'm excited. We always have a lot of fun. I look forward to some crazy questions the fans ask. And hopefully we can talk about a bunch of stuff, not just football. We can talk about whatever else, travel, food, especially, how much I like food. So I look forward to those questions and look forward to helping Christian in his social life. It'll be fun.
I have known him for a long time. He's needed your help before the COVID stuff came out.
Yeah. We'll start with a haircut, fashion, and we'll go there with his approach and his confidence. We'll do the whole full mantra with him, and hopefully we'll get him ready to go and make him a well-rounded gentleman that's excitable and accessible to other folks.
Ben, that's why we bring Coach Sean Quinn on, for the great perspective. But no, really excited, Coach, for you and your student athletes, the program, and all the work you guys have put in on the field, off the field, to get to this point. Savannah State and West Alabama on Saturday. That one's over in Mobile. We're looking forward to it. Have fun, Coach. Enjoy it. You guys have worked hard. Thank you so much, and we'll chat again soon.
Hey, man, I appreciate you guys. And by the way, during the quarantine, I talked to you guys more than my better half. So I got to know you guys on a really good level. So I appreciate you guys. And you kept me intrigued and kept me entertained when there was a time when I was bored to tears with not having football or sports. So I appreciate you guys. Go Tigers. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Go Tigers. And Ben, just real quick, I know we're up against it, but so happy for those guys. And man, let's enjoy some football on Saturday.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. BJ, should be a great matchup. And as Coach said, mirror images of each other on defense. Looking forward to seeing some of these young guys, BJ, grow up. They get to start that growing process Saturday afternoon.
A lot more to get to. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It was really good to hear from Sean Quinn. Been on a game week. You know, I know he and his staff and the student athletes there, everybody associated with the program, have worked so hard and are really excited about this. I wanted to mention again what you mentioned, because we're so excited for this week. pncoastal.com. You can get it archived, but on the air tomorrow at 6 o'clock, the Sean Quinn Show with Coach and Christian Gokel. So tune in. That'll be in all markets at 6 o'clock. To hear Coach talk more about the game and about the process and about his student athletes who have just got to be ready to go, man. Get out there and play some football. And again, that'll be up on the web at espncoastal.com as well. Really excited for their opportunity. Ben, also wanted to mention you got a chance for a couple of teams in the state of Georgia to get a ticket to the big dance here tonight. Obviously, March Madness tournament play is underway. Is that tonight or tomorrow night? As my computer just froze.
I want to say it's tomorrow night, but I could be wrong.
Okay, my computer just froze. I believe you're looking at Georgia State in the Sun Belt final on the men's side. That is tonight, as Georgia State takes on Appalachian State at 7 on ESPN2. And then on ESPN, Mercer taking on UNC Greensboro in the SoCon final. Both those games are tonight. So a win by Georgia State, they are in the NCAA tournament on the men's side. A win by Mercer, they are in the NCAA tournament as well. So keep an eye on those finals tonight.
BJ, the big dance is always a beautiful thing, and that's the thing about basketball that you love. Everybody get a chance to punch their ticket. I mean, we were talking, BJ, we were talking about 29 guys from the state of Georgia, punch their ticket to get a chance to be get in the National Football League. Georgia State and Mercer got a chance to punch their ticket to the big dance. We know who you rooting for, but we always rooting for our Georgia teams as well.
Hey man, you need to worry about your own team. I mean,
we won't even be a Cinderella story. We'll be one and done. We'll be out of there.
And the Mercer ladies already in the NCAA tournament. So great to see these programs around the state have a chance to go on to the big dance. We'll come back with more talk some college football in the final hour. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Final hour of 3 and Out here on a Monday afternoon, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop, and a lot of college football to talk about this hour. We still have voting on ESPN Coastal on Twitter for our greatest college running back of all time bracket. Round 1 matchups are underway. Some of these pairings a little lopsided, some not so much. So go to ESPN Coastal on Twitter to vote, and we'll talk about, Ben, I guess, officially cast our ballots as well, coming up a little bit later in the program. But spring football settling in around the SEC, one of the more interesting teams out there, Ole Miss. And with us now from the Clarion Ledger to talk about the Rebels, Nick Suss. Nick, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing well, y'all. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. And you look at Ole Miss, I believe won 4 of 5 to end the year last season. You bring back the best quarterback in the league. As spring practice starts, is there a sense that this is a team that can be a contending team in 2021?
Yeah, I think there are obviously levels to the word contending. I don't think anybody's expecting them to come out and win the SEC West when Alabama's still where Alabama is. But I think there's a lot of thought and anticipation that this could be the Ole Miss team that makes that jump to being an 8 or 9 win team, with the way the schedule shakes out and with the way the West looks, with LSU still having some questions and Auburn having some questions with the coaching change and Texas A&M having a new quarterback. Ole Miss does kind of feel like the most consistent returning offensive team, and I guess that's why some people have some high hopes.
And Nick, when you look at the fact that a guy like Matt Corral definitely has everything, all the tools needed, when you look at what Lane Kiffin wants to do on offense, obviously, I mean, as you mentioned, Alabama is the gold standard in college football, regardless of SEC or not. After Alabama, I mean, Arkansas, Tennessee, LSU, Auburn, Liberty, Ole Miss could potentially get on a nice little roll after they play Alabama.
Yeah, that's going to be the thing they have to follow, because it's not the easiest non-conference schedule when you have Louisville and Liberty and Tulane. Those are somewhat formidable non-SEC teams, but as you get into that middle of the schedule, you're right, there is a chance for them to string some wins together. And if they can do that, just based off of the caliber of teams they play and the way the timing shakes out, there's reason to believe this could be an Ole Miss team that's facing a top 15, top 20 ranking in October, early November, which, if you're doing that, obviously that's a team that you have to have high expectations for. But it's also the SEC, so if you drop one to Arkansas like they did last year, or if you drop one to Auburn like they have for a few years running now, that's not a surprise. It's still a very, very tough league.
Ole Miss was in some wild football games last year. I mean, you think about obviously the Alabama game, but even Kentucky, Florida, LSU at the end of the year, the South Carolina game just had PlayStation-like numbers. Ole Miss last in the SEC in defense a year ago. For as good as this offense is, how much progress needs to be made on the other side of the ball so that you're not having to win games 60-55 every weekend?
Yeah, that's going to be the real question. Ole Miss signed, I think, the number 17 recruiting class in the country this year, and I think of the 24 guys they signed, 17 were defensive or something along those lines. They really went out and, especially on the defensive line and in the secondary, tried to completely revamp this roster. And new defensive line coach coming in, they really are trying to fix some of these issues. They had a brutal secondary last year that really got beat over the top a ton. They gave up 400 rushing yards against Kentucky alone, and that wasn't a particularly potent Kentucky offense. I think that this is a defense that returns some pieces that you can feel excited about, like at linebacker, Lakia Henry and Momo Sanogo, and at edge rusher, Sam Williams. There are some people there who you can be excited about, but they're going to need to take significant strides on defense just to get to league average. And if you can get to league average with Matt Corral at quarterback and with Jerrion Ealy returning at running back and that sort of talent, maybe that's when you start talking about contending. But if this is still a defense that's allowing 500 yards a game, it's going to be a long season.
And Nick, I mean, obviously Jerry Ely going to have a lot to do with that, with what they want to do on offense. But I mean, even getting back to the schedule, I mean, Alabama is Alabama. I mean, Texas A&M is going to be super duper talented this year. But I mean, Auburn, they got new coordinators on both sides of the ball. Arkansas is still Arkansas. LSU, we don't know if they're going to deal with the hangover from last year, bringing into this year. What do you need to see from Ole Miss early on before they get to Alabama? Because they're going to have to build confidence before and after to think they can be that second team coming out of the West this year.
Yeah, that's going to be the interesting thing you have to see in those build-up games. They start the year at a neutral site game against Louisville, so that one will be a nice little test. Louisville was kind of down last year, but that's still a very good team with a very strong defense. It'll actually profile a little bit like the bowl game against Indiana last year, so we'll see how that works. But I think to answer the question, what they're going to need to do is find those weapons, because Lane Kiffin's offense throughout history, whether you're looking at his USC days or his Alabama days or FAU, he doesn't have a scheme so much as he has players he likes to favor. And last year that was Elijah Moore, the receiver, who's probably going to be a second or third round pick this year. With him gone, is it going to be Ely, who takes over more as like the Kenyon Drake type player he used at Alabama? Is he going to use a tight end like he did at FAU? Is he going to find a receiver as a slot guy or an outside guy? It's going to be about finding who is that number one and number two target for Corral to disperse the ball to.
We're chatting with Nick Suss of the Clarion Ledger here, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop, and Ole Miss, one of the more fascinating teams on paper in the SEC. And I mentioned it, Nick, at the beginning of the interview. Ole Miss finished the year with 4 out of 5 wins. I've gotten kind of different opinions on this. Do you think there's tangible momentum from the end of one season to the start of another, or do you think there's kind of so much time in between that momentum isn't practical or isn't applicable when a team moves forward?
I don't necessarily believe that there's that much carrying over. If that was the case, then I don't think a 15-0 LSU team would have lost to Mississippi State week 1 this year. But I think that there's quality matters. And when you do have quality players, you're going to win more games than you lose. And I think that with Ole Miss, not just returning a lot of production, but returning a lot of veteran production. There are going to be a lot of fifth-year seniors on this team this year just because of the COVID rules turning rosters over. And when you're Alabama or when you're LSU or Georgia or Florida, some of these teams in the SEC that tend to turn over players every 3 years, there aren't that many teams like Ole Miss where you're going to look at somebody like Braylon Sanders, who's going to be a fifth-year senior receiver. Or you're going to look at somebody like Momo Sanogo, who I mentioned, who's coming back as a fifth-year senior linebacker. You're going to have some of these players who are just extremely veteran. And that's something kind of unique to Ole Miss, if they're returning these very talented veteran players who weren't quite the type of guys that were going to go pro this year, but are coming back for one more time to prove, hey, maybe we are second, third, fourth round picks. And that's kind of maybe going to be the strength of this team.
And Nick, something you said that I think is really intriguing. I mean, the thing about Lane Kiffin, we always talk about Matt, having a guy like Matt Corral, to me, is, the best quarterback coming back this year in the SEC. The second year of his system, the teams around him seem to pick up what he's doing. You mentioned that he doesn't really have scheme. It's about favoring players. Do you think he's going to have to go more to scheme? Because these SEC defenses are looking at this tape all offseason to be able to kind of counteract what he wants to do on offense.
I don't know if he needs to change what he's doing. It's worked for going on 20 years now, running high-profile offenses across college football. I think the thing that he believes, and that I kind of have seen reflected through this first year and a half he's been in Oxford, is the conventional wisdom might be wrong. The idea of, he talks about when he had Amari Cooper as a wide receiver at Alabama, and he looked at Saban and said, I don't know why you didn't throw the ball to Julio Jones 150 times, but we're going to throw it to Amari Cooper 150 times. I don't care if they know it's coming. We're going to do what we can with these superstar players. So let's say Ole Miss deems that Henry Parrish, its sophomore running back, is the guy. He's not afraid to give him the ball 350 times. He did it with Devin Singletary. He did it with Derrick Henry And their running backs coach is Kevin Smith, who did it himself in college. Let's say it's Jerrion Ely out of the slot or at running back. They're not afraid to give him 200, 300 touches because that's what he did with Kenyon Drake at Alabama. If it's your tight end, he won the Mackey Award 2 years ago for the best tight end in the country, Harrison Bryant, at FAU. He's not afraid to get the ball to one player because he knows that even if a defense keys in on him, like Elijah Moore last year, well, figure out a different way. It's up to you to figure out a creative way to get your player the ball.
Good perspective from Nick Suss, the Clarion Ledger here on 3 and Out. Ole Miss, really interesting when you talk about teams in the SEC for this fall and the spring set to get underway. Nick, thanks so much for the time.
Happy to help y'all.
Nick Suss, the Clarion Ledger. And Ben, when you look at Ole Miss, a lot of people may not know this, and I guess Texas A&M now being a new member, but of the long-form traditional members, Ole Miss is the only team out of that group to have never made the SEC championship game. Mississippi State has, back with Wayne Madkin and those guys. Arkansas has multiple times. Again, A&M, a relatively new member, but of the older members, the only group, I agree with Nick in that everything goes through Alabama, and that's it. You got to kind of you can't use a semicolon. You got to put a period after that. However, if there was ever a year where Ole Miss should look around and go, I mean, could we be you have the best quarterback in the SEC, probably by far. You have one of the best playmakers in the country in Jerrion Ely. You've won 4 out of 5. You have one of the best head coaches in the game. You got some guys back on defense. Henry and Sonogo at linebacker. Now you've got to take some steps forward there, but you've got some coaching additions. Ole Miss should feel like they can scare the heck out of anybody, right? I mean, last year they had Alabama on the ropes. I mean, Alabama. Now, can you do that again? I don't know, but I think there's a little something to this Ole Miss team.
Only thing that scares me about what Nick said was, look at the guys that he's saying, if I got to give it to one guy, 300-something times, well, not too many people compare to Derrick Henry. I don't think nobody can really compare to Amari Cooper, BJ, except for the last couple of years with Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith. Harrison Bryant won the Mackey Award. I'm not, and obviously I do agree with him saying he's had successful offenses for the last 20 years, but you're gonna have to adjust in the SEC. Definitely in the SEC West. Matt Corral makes it so that BJ, I think they can do whatever they want to do. Jerrion Ely is like a Swiss Army knife because he can do a lot of things catching the football. But he says it's not scheme, it's players. Yeah, but you was at Alabama. Can't nobody stop nothing Alabama does. You was at FAU to where you had some big time players, but I do think that how they adjust BJ before they get to Alabama and after they get to Alabama, because I do agree. Auburn, Texas A&M, LSU. I mean, those guys are beatable teams, especially when they're coming off the years they have. Can Texas A&M handle the smoke of being looked upon as a big dog? Can Auburn deal with the fact that they got to deal with 2 coordinators with Bo Nix and LSU, who going to be their quarterback? I think Ole Miss got a shot to make some noise this year. Not with Alabama, but that second spot in the West, BJ, I think is wide open.
And they'll open the year in the ATL, I believe, on a Monday night against Louisville at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So a little Monday night football with Ole Miss and Louisville. We'll come back. We'll hear from the legendary Adrian Peterson as we're continuing on with our greatest running backs in college football bracket on ESPN Coastal. What does AP think about some of the greats of the greats? We'll chat with him next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. college football have to be replaced? What are the expectations, and how has that gone historically over the last generation or so? Ben, Savannah State's got a football game this weekend over in Mobile, Alabama. The head coach of the Tigers, Sean Quinn, will join us. We'll talk about that. I know those guys have waited a long time to play some football, so Sean Quinn will be with us in hour 2. We'll also talk some Ole Miss football with Nick Suss of the Clarion Ledger. But if you've seen it on ESPN Coastal Twitter, we, the show, Christian, we have created a running back bracket. It's March. You got to have brackets out there to vote on to determine a champion with. And we have a bracket of the 32 best running backs in college football history. A 1 seed on that bracket, joining us now on the show, a college football Hall of Famer, one of the premier running backs in the history of college football, a legend on the field, off the field, just an absolute superstar in every sense of the word. Georgia Southern great Adrian Peterson with us on the program. AP, what's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How are you guys?
We're doing great, and we appreciate you coming on. You're so humble about your career, but we have to hype you up, okay? The stats, the championships, the success, the consistency. AP, there's never been anything like it, man. You're a college football Hall of Famer for great reason. When you look back on your career personally, what stands out?
Man, starting out just winning is winning. You know, here at Georgia Southern, we was fortunate enough to win a lot of ball games, and I think that's what elevates you as an individual is how well did your team do.
And AP, I mean, BJ kind of touched on it though. I mean, winning aside, I mean, you was able to be a big part of that when you talk about your production, not just game in and game out, but you had enough stats in the postseason for a career. When you talk about the type of numbers you was able to put up, just talking about that standard that you held yourself to, and obviously the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, and you said it's the standard. It never shaken. Whether we were playing App State, whether we were playing Furman, whether for University of Georgia, Oregon State, it didn't change. You go all out and try to put your team in best position, to win, and doing that every Saturday.
We're chatting with Georgia Southern legend Adrian Peterson here on 3 and Out, ESPN Coastal. We have started our greatest college running backs ever bracket. Voting for round 1 is underway. Ben, you've probably seen this. AP is matched up with D'Angelo Williams. This was just posted. AP, you're currently leading that bracket vote 97% to 3% with over 120 votes. But let me ask you this, man. Who were some of the running backs when you started settling in at the position that you looked up to that you really admired?
Oh, yes. Herschel Walker was one. Walter Payton was one, and Bo Jackson. And as you may notice, all 3 of those guys wore number 34. So my first jersey number was number 34 because I wanted to add a little bit of their game in mine. And that's what I encourage, younger kids to also do. When you're watching the game, don't just watch the game, but watch your position and what those guys are doing and try to add a little bit of that in your game. Because if they're doing it, then 90% of it is going to be correct.
And AP, you speak of watching those guys' game. I mean, you wearing number 34 because those guys wore 34. Some of those kids, a lot of those kids, hopefully all of them, are watching number 3 at Georgia Southern. When they watch your game, what should they get from your game?
Going hard and hitting it hard. I wasn't a speed guy. Nor I guess agility guy, but always going hard and never allowing one guy bring me down. That was my staple, and I tried to, from Pop Warner to high school to college and to the NFL to continue carrying that mindset that don't allow one guy to bring you down.
Chatting with the legend Adrian Peterson here on 3 and Out as we're discussing the greatest running backs in college football history. Bracket up, voting up on ESPN Coastal on Twitter. And again, AP dominating in his round 1 matchup. You mentioned some of the guys you grew up following. Have there been any running backs since you finished your college playing career that you've really enjoyed watching? I know a lot of people think about AP guys like Reggie Bush and Darren McFadden and Travis Etienne or Derrick Henry. Have there been any guys over the last 10, 15 years that you've really enjoyed watching?
Well, the guy, who's just a couple of years older than myself was Fred Taylor. I can remember I was a sophomore in high school, and of course he came in the same class as my brother Mike Peterson, and he came over to the house, and seeing how big he was and how fast he was, it was an amazing that a guy who was 230, 235 that could run that fast. So, that motivated me a little bit more to get in that weight room because I saw what a Division I running back looked like. And so having those opportunities to see guys as a high school student helped me as well.
AP, what does a guy like Fred Taylor, outside of the fact that you see his size, his speed, his agility, do for a guy like yourself sitting in your living room talking to you, and what about conversations like that help you be able to pass on that wisdom to today's running backs?
Oh, you just look and see that's what a Division I running backs look like. And as you mentioned, man, just the speed, the quickness, the power, has it all. And again, when I went on junior year, senior year, just trying to add a little bit more in my game because, if those guys were, Division I starters at a primetime university, then they were doing something right on the field. And as I said, just trying to add a little bit of their game into yours.
Every all-time great player, all-time great running back has a signature moment. You have a number of them, but a lot of people will always remember the run against Youngstown State. I mean, you're running through guys, you're throwing guys off out of bounds, you're running around the corner to the point where you're making DBs look slow. Somebody tries to square up on you in the open field. That's a terrible idea. You got the stiff arm coming left and right. Walk us through that 58-yard run against Youngstown State, and what was it like in the moment to be that unstoppable?
And in the moment, it didn't seem as great as it looked because when you got the ball, like it may seem like 30 seconds, but I mean it's half a second, and every step is a different angle because, if I'm running down the middle and then I shift a little bit to the left, then that's another angle that the linebacker or the safety is coming at. So every 2 to 3 steps, I try to get another snapshot of where the guys are coming from, and as you get it, just trying to score with it.
And AP, I mean, you talk about the fact that you prided yourself on not going down, not letting one guy take you down. What goes? Because I mean, I can only imagine what's going on in the minds of a DB, a linebacker, so anybody with the opposite color jersey on when Adrian Peterson is coming at him. But before you make impact, are you saying to yourself, You know, you saying to yourself, look, I mean, I do this to everybody. I'm doing this for my team, because people talk about business decisions. Well, everybody that tackled you had to make a business decision, AP. And last time I checked, their business went out of business after they got done dealing with you.
Yeah, man. And, you know, just stand on track. Because it's a lot. And, you know, anytime you carry the ball, it's a lot, because you have 11 guys who are trying to come and take you out. So it's a lot that's going through your mind, you know, setting up your guys to be in position. It's scoring, you know, the guy shooting out your legs low, protecting your body. Because I always, again, tell a lot of running backs that I speak with is learn how to protect yourself, because your antennas got to be up, and your antennas, I mean, by awareness, because you're gonna have guys unblocked, which is fine. You know, I always tell guys that before you get the ball, you should expect anything to happen, because you never know what's going to happen. So your antennas should always be up, because if a guy comes through, you got to make a quick move, stiff arm, drop the shoulder, spin out of it, burst, you know, set the guy up. So it's a lot going on in your mind. And I love it because there's nothing like it.
Here on ESPN Coastal, our greatest college running backs ever bracket for the month of March is underway. You can vote on a couple of first-round matchups here on ESPN Coastal on Twitter. We're thrilled to be chatting with Adrian Peterson, one of the greatest players in college football history. And AP, I wanted to get a couple of picks. We got about 30 seconds left. First, I'll give you an update. D'Angelo Williams, just an all-time star. You are currently leading him 97% to 3%. With over 130 votes. Let me get, and boy, these are tough. I mean, I hate to put you on the spot. Better college running back, Jim Brown or Ladainian Tomlinson, AP?
Now, I wasn't able to see live games of Jim Brown, so I can't speak. And you know, that's what I like is LT used to told it, man. He used to told it. So all my backs, man. And I see the list, man. The list is amazing. So I'm just glad to be on the list, man.
And something tells me you'll be advancing, you'll be around, and you'll be in this thing for quite some time. A great perspective, again, from one of the all-time best football players the sport has ever seen, one of the all-time best dudes as well. Adrian, thanks so much for your perspective in a few minutes on the show, man. We always enjoy it.
Appreciate you guys, man. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you so much, Adrian Peterson. And Ben, woo! Look, D'Angelo Williams, a stud. But AP, you don't want that first-round matchup with AP. This is a guy that is, you know, you and I have talked about it, without question, one of the greatest players, running backs ever. Really enjoy chatting with him. Great perspective as always.
Yeah, and I can appreciate AP from not even being able to answer. Listen, man, I love he loves Adrian. I mean, he loves Ladainian, but never got to see Jim Brown. That's a man that's very humble.
BJ, a potential Adrian Peterson v. Adrian Peterson final.
I mean, that would be something, man. I mean, look,
Bears Vikings, baby.
Yeah, we've speculated about, you know, what could from a voting standpoint, what could a Georgia Southern Adrian Peterson versus Georgia Herschel Walker matchup potentially look like?
No. According to Cody, Saquon's going to upset Herschel Walker in the next round.
Yeah, that would surprise me. Not unless PJ can get on there and vote like 2,000 times.
Or if like a Penn State Barstool account takes the Twitter poll over and retweets it, then maybe.
Yeah. But great stuff from AP. We'll come back. Craziness, obviously, surrounding the Rush Probst situation over in Valdosta. We'll talk about that next. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network on a Monday afternoon. BJ Bennett, Ben Troop alongside, and we've been talking a lot about running backs. Great to hear from AP, the greatest running backs in college football history. And I noticed greatest was included in the title, not necessarily best. So let's keep that in mind, America, when we vote. But we have a 32 running back bracket. We have some first round matchups here. ESPNcoastal.com. We've gotten a lot of votes. Close to 200 votes there for Adrian Peterson over D'Angelo Williams. Now, I want to make sure I structurally understand this. Is we are going to take a collection of votes to decide a winner. And as I believe, Ben, is the anticipation, you, me, Kevin, Christian, and the fan vote are going to determine, I guess, how all this goes. Is that right, Producer Cody?
As far as I know, that is right. And if it's not right, I guarantee you we'll get a message real quick from the producer, Christian Gokel himself. But as far as I know, that is it.
All right. So do you have Kevin's votes and Christian's votes?
I have Kevin's votes and Christian's votes.
All right, then let's quickly, Cody, you can mark it down on the bracket. Let's quickly determine our fan vote winners. We will get this straight off of Twitter. Majority rules simply. So, greatest running backs ever bracket round 1. You had Herschel Walker defeat Emmitt Smith by a margin of 88.2% to 11.8. Ben, are you surprised that wasn't a little bit closer?
I'm not. I think what happens is, I mean, when you think about college football, BJ, compared to the NFL, I think Herschel is miles ahead of what Emmitt Smith was. So yeah, I mean, you hear Herschel all the time. People don't really give Emmitt a just due. So yeah, I wasn't surprised at all.
All right, so mark it down, Cody. Herschel has the fan vote over Emmitt Smith. That was the 1 versus 8. We move up to the 5 versus 4. Saquon Barkley at 63% defeats, this is an upset, the 4 seed Marcus Allen at 37%. So I wonder if PJ Zuko, Ben, had a little bit to do with that one.
Yeah, well, BJ, we're going to have that recency bias. But if you got recency bias when it pertains to Saquon Barkley, I am not mad at you. I mean, I understand that he was going to be a fan favorite. So, yes, I was not surprised at that one either. But even though I do think we need to go check in some of them burner accounts, BJ, I think PJ and Mario might have been voting a little bit more.
All right, so Saquon Barkley advances there. You have the 3 versus so write that down with the fan vote, Cody. You have the 3 versus 6. Reggie Bush against George Rogers from South Carolina. Reggie Bush, Ben, with 90.6% of the vote.
I mean, obviously, you got two former Heisman winners. Even though I do think the Heisman, I think hopefully they gave it back to Reggie Bush. But yeah, I kind of had a feeling, BJ, right? When you talk about Reggie Bush, he's one of the gold standards at the running back position. It's going to be hard to beat him, no matter who it was.
Reggie Bush wins the fan vote. We move up, and this is all on ESPN Coastal. This is round 1. Pretty fascinating matchup here. The 2 seed Walter Payton, the 7 seed Gale Sayers. Walter Payton wins, Ben, with 65.6% of the vote.
Two former Chicago Bears greats, Hall of Famers. But yeah, once again, Jackson State, shout out to Prime and those guys. But yeah, I would love Gale Sayers, but it's hard to be better than Sweetness.
Fan vote goes to Sweetness. All right, the 2 versus the 7. Archie Griffin defeats Travis Etienne with a fan vote percentage of 73.3% for the 2-time Heisman Trophy winner.
Travis Etienne, BJ, I mean, a silent assassin just go about his business, but it's going to be hard to beat a guy that won the Heisman twice. Not even Travis Etienne can deal with that.
You have Archie Griffin move on there. We have a 3-6 matchup again on the other side. Jim Brown, Ladainian Tomlinson. This one was close. LT wins the fan vote with 51.7%.
50. Number one, I appreciate the fans for even making it close. Jim Brown is one of those guys, BJ, you could say arguably the greatest player all time, in the NFL with everything he's done. But LT, wow. I mean, like I said, I don't think you can get it wrong with, when it comes to this voting, but LT was a bad man at TCU.
Well, I was a little surprised this one was as lopsided as it was, given that Charles White had a 2,000-yard season at Southern Cal. But Eddie George in the 5-4 upsets Charles White with 88% of the vote.
Eddie George is always going to be a fan favorite, BJ. When you're talking about those great Ohio State running backs like Ezekiel Elliott, I know you got, Trey Sermon and those guys coming out now. But, run, Eddie, run. I can see why he got that dub.
Yeah, a big dub for Eddie George. And then finally, the 1 versus 8 on the other side of the bracket, Adrian Peterson against D'Angelo Williams. Adrian Peterson with, again, close to 200 votes, 96.3% for the legend.
The fact that D'Angelo got any votes at all against AP, man, is very, very shocking. Shout out to both. But yeah, Adrian, the original Adrian Peterson, taking nothing away from the Oklahoma Adrian Peterson. Yes, you knew that he was moving on to the second round. That was no question.
All right, we're tabulating all the votes. So Ben, you and me and Kevin and Christian are all going to get in here. So Cody, you have kind of the big macro totals on your sheet. Let's start right there at the top. Cody, Ben and I will go, and then you tell us who Kevin and Christian picked. With all due respect to D'Angelo Williams, Ben, I think it's obvious. AP, one of the GOATs, one of the greatest of all time. That's my pick there.
Yes, I mean, I got a chance to learn a lot about D'Angelo Williams. He was still at Memphis when I first got drafted by the Titans because his old fullback used to tell me about him. But yes, it's Adrian Peterson.
So we got the fan vote, Adrian Peterson, Kevin, Adrian Peterson, Christian, Adrian Peterson, BJ, and Ben, also Adrian Peterson. It is a sweep for AP.
AP advances. Well done, Cody. All right, that was the 1-8. We moved down to the 4-5. Eddie George won the fan vote over Charles White. Ben, where do you go between the two greats?
Listen, at the end of the day, BJ, I mean, I know this is going to sound bad, but I mean, Charles White sounds like, TV was only in black and white when he played. Give me Eddie George, who also won the Heisman. Give me Run, Eddie, Run.
All right, it's close because Charles White had that 2,000-yard season, but I went and looked. Eddie George had almost 500 yards receiving his last year in Columbus, and that's before that was kind of a regular thing for running backs. So close, but give me Eddie George.
All right, sweep again. Kevin, Christian, fans, BJ, and Ben all go towards Eddie. That's a sweep.
Eddie George advances in our running back bracket. All right, Ben, Ladainian Tomlinson, the 6 versus Jim Brown, the 3. This was a narrow LT win in our fan vote.
BJ, man, I mean, I love LT, man. LT was one of those guys where he revolutionized like what he was doing at TCU, but dude, Jim Brown did it when there was nobody to compare himself to. He did it around time. So for me, give me Jim Brown.
Hang on. Let me tell you right now, it's half and half. Your vote right here will give one of these two to advance, no pressure.
All right, man. Look, this is brutal because I can't stop thinking about 454 yards that LT had. But I look at it like this. It's about kind of the impact and the legacy. And for as amazing as LT is, Ben, I'm with you. I think I just got to, even though the stats are in favor of LT, I think just the impact, with all due respect, I think I got to go Jim Brown.
Jim Brown advances. We got Kevin, Jim Brown, Ben, Jim Brown, BJ, Jim Brown, Christian did LT, and the fans did LT slimly.
Wow. So well done there, Cody, laying it out for people. That's tight. Jim Brown advances. We move down to the 2-7. Archie Griffin, Ben, against Travis Etienne.
You know how much I love Travis Etienne, BJ. A guy that just goes about his business. But I'm telling you, Travis Etienne was never a Heisman Trophy candidate. Never made it to New York. Archie Griffin made it to New York, if it was in New York then, and won it twice. I'm going to go with Archie Griffin, BJ. You got to respect a 2-time Heisman Trophy winner.
And the numbers are sick, man. I mean, Archie Griffin is one of the greats. If you want to go best, I might go Etienne. Go Etienne. But again, 2 Heismans, that's a legacy that's beyond compare. So I will go Archie Griffin even over my guy, Etienne.
That's a sweep. Archie goes on.
All right, sorry, Travis. Archie advances. We move down the bracket here. The 2-seed Gale Sayers. Excuse me, the 2-seed Walter Payton, Ben. The 7-seed Gale Sayers.
I mean, once again, man, Gale Sayers, BJ was ahead of his time. I mean, kind of like the very first Percy Harvin, and he can do it all. But for me, Walter Payton is another one of those guys, BJ, real similar to like a Jim Brown was doing it when nobody else was doing it. At an HBCU, was still going in there getting it done at Jackson State. Shout out to Prime. For me, give me sweetness.
Yeah, Cody, I'm going Walter Payton here too.
Yeah, Walter Payton sweep going in.
Walter Payton advances quickly. I believe this one will probably be a sweep. Reggie Bush and George Rogers. I love George Rogers, but I got to go Reggie. You too, Ben?
Yes, Reggie Bush, one of the greatest ever do it. Give me Reggie.
Reggie sweeps.
Reggie Bush advances. This was an interesting one. Saquon Barkley and Marcus Allen. I'm going to go Marcus Allen, Ben. You?
Man, I listen, Saquon Barkley, man, I love what he did, but Marcus Allen was so nice to US. Give me one, them US, they just kept coming up. Give me Marcus Allen, BJ, because he did it in a place to where Andy had to block. Still went out there and did it.
Saquon only won the fan vote. Everybody else went with Marcus Allen.
Sorry, fans, you're wrong. And finally, I think this is a sweep too. I'll take Herschel over Emmitt. Ben, are you going with Emmitt over Herschel?
Not going with Emmitt over Herschel, BJ. I mean, I love Emmitt Smith, man. He's still one of the gold standards. But when you think about, you cannot talk about the running back position without talking about Herschel. Give me Herschel Walker. That's easy.
Sweet
Right,
Herschel.
Yes, to go to ESPN Coastal. Herschel moving on, Marcus Allen moving on, Reggie Bush, Walter Payton, Archie Griffin, Jim Brown, Eddie George, and Adrian Peterson. Keep refreshing ESPN Coastal for more polls coming your way. We'll come back with 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. I love talking out the booking of guests on the show, especially Ben, when you have no idea what I'm going to ask you, but I'm half promoting this. Are we still working on Brevin Jordan for this week?
We are still working on Brevin Jordan for this week, BJ. I mean, one of the best tight ends coming out. I mean, I'm looking forward to, us setting up later on this week where he has Brevin Jordan, former University of Miami, added to that long line of great tight ends. BJ should have him on later on in the week. Looking forward to it.
Looking forward to that. All right, congratulations to the Mercer ladies already in the NCAA basketball tournament. The Mercer men and the Georgia State men playing for a conference tournament championship tonight at 7 o'clock. One on ESPN, one on ESPN2. So best of luck to those squads. We'll see you tomorrow, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.